to be, you know, it has to fall just right in the schedule. And if they want to take 2 sciences, they have to fall exactly right with the labs matching up.
And I think with any schedule you'll have a conflict, but I think Deb Cotner-Davis, David Lebowski, they do a phenomenal job in making sure that the students get the science classes that they want. Rarely, and now we have the option, and I shouldn't say option, but there is the consideration of cyber programs and working with the teacher. We have the Bucks County Tech School, so there are certainly circumstances where there are conflicts and students aren't getting classes that they want, but that also applies to every other AP, especially AP courses where we only have 1 or 2, we call them singletons, where there's maybe only 1 class offered.
Right, but having the science having to go over 2 periods adds complexity to the
Certainly
schedule.
does.
Yep, and having an odd number adds complexity, whereas if you had an even number of classes, it makes the scheduling simpler.
It does, and then it does, yes it does.
Okay. One thing that I want to, I don't have too many other questions because I've asked a lot of questions throughout the process, but one thing that I want to comment on is the changing of the goals. And there was a presentation made to the board in June of 2016 with the goals, and you were just saying that this checklist that was done with Dr. Reddig in October of 2016 was something that hadn't been shared, but yet it was shared with everyone and it was shared with the board. Those goals were shared with the board in June of 2016. And we had those goals for 2 years and then they were changed just this past fall. And comparing the goals, I mean, if you look at the original goals, one was to evaluate our schedule for efficiency and determine the best schedule that places students and student learning at the core, use time more efficiently and effectively, offer more time for additional courses choices. So the efficiency of the schedule is nowhere to be seen in the revised goals, and the offering more time for additional courses or choices for students was changed to offering more diverse course offerings, which is a different goal because we've been doing that, saying, okay, well now there's more electives, you can have more choices, but if you don't have any more time to take the electives, you don't get them. You pointed out in the, those 10 best schools and that's what the Department of Ed, their website pulls up those schools and chooses them, and then you chose the 10 best. You pointed out which ones had block and which had traditional, but if you look at them, all of them have at least 8 periods, so kids get 8 classes instead of 7, except for Quakertown. And if you want to add in Wissahickon, which has an SPP score of over 100, they have a modified block, and Lower Moreland, who has their SPP score is 90.9, they also have an 8-period day. What I see is that kids, when they go to college, they need to come in almost, I believe that there's more specialization in college and more demand that students choose earlier on and decide what they're doing, and there's not really room, for electives there, time to explore. The time to explore is in high school, and our kids aren't getting as many electives as they could. And clearly, when you go, if you have 8 periods and you have less time, that there's clearly a trade-off that there are more choices for students, and they get to explore more. And that's not addressed at all, and it was in fact eliminated from the goals when the goals were changed. You also have, in the original goals, allow more critical thinking, the 21st century learning goals, and that's in here, but it also had longer periods of time for 21st century learning goals, so that was taken out of the goals. The third goal was to build in professional development opportunities within the school day. That was taken out, that there's no time within the school day, and changed with the new goals. And then the fourth one was to provide intervention remediation, and that one did remain. So I find it still surprising that, well, I guess these are reading from the artifact, but they're in a different order on there. I find it surprising that the goals were changed, without notifying the board, after the board was given a presentation with those specific goals, and then they were changed. talking about time, that was the first one. In some of the links, in the frequently asked questions link, and just talking about the issue of using the time during the day, one of the questions that was asked, it was number 21, and I don't know what slide number it is now, but I guess it's, I don't know what artifact it is.
It's 3.
Slide 3.
Artifact 3.
Okay, artifact 3. Right, yeah, so, well, it had numbers on the thing. So the question was, will the number of discipline referrals change with a different scheduling model? And the answer was, with less transitions between classes, there will be less lateness to class. Overall discipline is relative to the 24% of the work. Right, so overall discipline is relative to the 24%. This is what I just copied it, but over 24% of the work is true discipline, while 76% is revolving around attendance behaviors. So when you have fewer transitions during the day, then you're going to have fewer times to be late, which would affect the discipline. So that was what one piece that was given to us. I have it was slide number 5 in the, it was the June 2016 presentation, which is just the link. Right, so it's slide 10. So if you go into that link, and that's artifact 4. Slide number 5 was the goals, which I pointed out. Slide number 10 has scheduling comparisons. And so it's, I believe it's the second to last slide. So it says the current schedule in a class, there's 150 hours per year. And it says 20% of the time is warm-up and closure. So, right, that's the time that the kids need to come in and get ready, and then closing up, and people start, they pack, you close your lesson and they pack up. So it says 20% of the time. I believe it's allocated, it's 5 minutes at the beginning and end of each period. So that is, if you add it up, that's 30 hours of warm-up closure. So the total teaching time is 120 hours. Plus there's 35 minutes of transition time each day. Schedule number 1, it says there's 112.5 hours per semester. That's with the RAMS period every day. And so that, it has the closure would end up being 14.63 hours of time. So the total teaching time is 97 hours. And schedule number 2, which is the block, there's 137 hours per semester. 12% of class time is warm-up and closure, or 16.55 hours. So the total teaching time is 121 hours. And there's only 20 minutes of transition time. So if you look at the current schedule, which has 150 hours, and this is the data that was given to us. This is what was presented to the board in June of 2016. So the current schedule, if you take out the warm-up and closure, you have 120 hours of teaching time and per class, and 35 minutes of transition time each day. In the block schedule, you end up with 121 hours of teaching time, which is an hour more, and only 20 minutes of transition time each day. Yeah, and then, I made the points in the beginning with the labs about if you have the block, you don't have to worry about scheduling a separate lab period. And if you have the 8-period day, you have that. And I made the point about just having more electives. So those aren't taken into consideration with the current schedule. So.
Okay, so we lost our PowerPoint out here, so I'm kind of flying blindly.